Alright, so this is the leg of lamb. This actual purple stuff is the mark. This is choice, and it has been rolled with a choice mark. And you can't really see the mark, but this is a choice mark. It's actually made from a byproduct of the winemaking industry. It's made from tartaric acid. When they scrape the red wine barrels, they take it. The white wine equivalent is cream of tartar. So this is the leg of lamb. The primal in front of that would be the loin, and then in front of that would be the rack. Right below the rack would be the breast, and here's the shank on the hind leg. When you look at the end of it, this is the chine bone. This is how it would be positioned on the leg. So this is the chine bone right here. This is where the spinal cord goes. This would be a little porterhouse. So you can see the strip steak here and the fillet, the tenderloin. Okay? So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to trim all the excess fat off. When you trim the fat off, don't do this. Don't trim into your hand. So you're going to start a little bit of it, then you're going to come back and hold it so that if your knife slips, it slips into the cutting board as opposed to your hand, so you don't cut your thumb. So start the fat and come in and take that off. We take all of this fat off and we end up with nice lean leg. We don't want the lamb fat because it's not going to give it any positive attributes, no good flavors. We take the fat, there's a big chunk of fat in here as well, and then we take off the fat that's on the outside of the flank steak. So once it's nice and clean, then we're going to come in and we're going to position it like this so that the tibia fibula is away from us. We can see this is called the pubic arcuate, or the lower portion of the pelvis. We're going to come in using the OJ cut around that. I'm pulling it apart as I cut. So we'll pull it apart so you can see where you're going. And you're kind of cutting it in an S shape. So you come around here and out this way. So just keep coming around until you can see down into that bone. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to come from here up to the chine bone. So I'm basically cutting from there to the inside of the chine bone here, down to the finger or loin bone to remove the tenderloin. So I'm going to come over, cut that tenderloin out of the way, come down against the H-bone so I can pull that out of the way. So now I can see my H-bone completely. This is my H-bone. It runs along here, comes down here. Okay? Now I can see the ball and socket joint that connects the H-bone into my femur. I'm going to cut through the sac that surrounds that ball and socket joint, and you can now see it a little bit more clearly. This is the top of the femur, called the greater trochanter, if you were upper portion of the femur. So now I can see that whole thing. I'm going to come around that H-bone. I'm going to start to pull it away. Ideally what I want to do is get my thumb into that socket joint so I can start rolling that bone back. The problem I run into is a little nubbin right down here. It's about the size of the tip of my pinky. I'm going to come around that little nubbin on the H-bone so that I can work around that, and then I'm going to cut underneath of that bone. Okay? Now I can get my finger into that ball and socket joint. Come back around, and I'm just going to start rolling the H-bone out. So roll it, cut against the bone. And roll that bone out. So this is our H-bone. And one of the reasons you can see why they started calling it the H-bone, when you look down here, you cut the little window out of this portion of the pelvis, is it kind of looks like an H. If you use your imagination, I guess. It's an H.
For hip.
Yeah.
I thought it was for hip.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to position that femur so that it's away from me. So I'm going to turn it like this. And I'm going to come in between this is the top round and the knuckle, called the knuckle, butcher's heart, face, or veiny. I'm going to come in against that femur, and see how I get the torque in my boning knife? I can come down against that against that femur, right out beneath. Now I can start to see that femur. This is the femur here. I can come in against that bone. I'm going to come down around the bottom part and keep working that around. And I'm going to spin it so that I can hold on to that femur. Pull it back. I'm going to come in as close and as clean to that femur bone as possible. Okay, now I can see my femur, and I want to work around the bottom. Okay, so keep coming around the bottom of that femur until you cut the meat off. Now I can hold on to the femur, let gravity be my assistant. Pull that down. So just keep cutting around the bottom of that femur. Let the meat pull itself away. You can see this is the bottom of the femur here. Right, now I can bend it and see where the joint is. So now I can come in and cut that femur out. Separate the femur. That's our femur. That's our femur. This is meniscus. Anyone here of tearing meniscus? This is the meniscus. Holds the femur in place. Now what we're going to do at this point is we're going to French the tibia fibula. You're basically going to come down about hand's width, do a ring cut around the tibia fibula. This is just like we did on the drumstick for the Statler. Cut all the way around. And then where you can see the bone, cut down on the bone. Then scrape using the back of your knife. Scrape that meat off the bone. So that it comes out nice and clean. That goes to our grinding pile. So now we've got that Frenched. The other thing we want to do is remove the patella. This is the patella here. Come in around the patella. Cut around it. Pull the patella out. And then what we have is we have a couple of different muscle groups. We're going to pull those muscles apart using the reticulum to separate them. Where you have a little connective tissue, that's actually the femoral artery. Tasty.
Chuck, can you sell that whole thing?
I could take that off and sell that as a lamb shank, or leave it on and use it as a lamb roast. Now, what we have is, in the round family, there's a kind of a pyramid-shaped chunk of fat. You can kind of see the top of it. This pyramid-shaped chunk of fat, we want to get that out because that's going to add a negative flavor attribution to our leg of lamb roast. So we're going to come in and just follow it down. Yeah. Follow it down. Right, so just now I'm holding onto that chunk of fat and I'm just working it out. Now, interestingly enough, in that chunk of fat is a gland. And that's what really tastes bad. You want to take that gland out. So we take that fat out. And then there's another chunk of fat. That's the round family. We'll come back to that in a second. This is the butt sirloin family over here. We're going to cut this fat out. There's another chunk of fat right in here. So we're going to pull this apart. We're going to go after the second chunk of fat. You can see that as I pull these muscles away, you can see the chunk of fat down here. We want to go down and pull that chunk of fat out as well. Interestingly enough, it is also shaped kind of like a pyramid. You can kind of see this is the top of the pyramid here, and it goes down on the sides around it. So for the most part, you can just come in and work around that chunk of fat until you can roll it out. But that's going to not taste good when you roast it and it melts. Alright, so get that fat out of there. And then I'm going to seam it out into there's 9 muscles in the leg of lamb. And I'll seam those out and I'll identify them for you.